The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements made by hosts or guests reflect their own beliefs and opinions and is not investment advice. The hosts or guests may have personal investments in any assets being discussed.
Hey everyone, welcome to the DeFi Podcast. This week we have the pleasure of having a guest on, and I will start by introducing him. Daniel, welcome. Daniel's from MetaMask Institutional, the cards division. We're going to talk about real-world payments, which is actually super exciting because crypto for most people has been completely useless, but I think that's about to change. So yeah, welcome to the show. Let's jump right into it. Daniel, do you want to maybe give us a little bit of background on you and how this project that I think a lot of people are not aware of, which I think is, again, super exciting, how that came together?
Yeah, sure. So I'll do the quick bio thing. I'll try. Also, thank you for the invite. It's great to be here with you all. The quick bio, crypto bio, I guess, is I was working in like a supply chain software company in 2012. If you know New York, to go to Staten Island, you got to take a boat. And a friend of ours got married. His family moved to Staten Island. So they had their party in Staten Island. And me and some other friends were on this boat for like 30 minutes. And this one guy working at Microsoft, shout out Jesse, thank you, put me onto Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And he insisted that I buy a few Bitcoins. And I did. And it was fun. And it was, I was interested. I was, let's say, a person who occasionally bought and sold them, used them. Every time there's a major news story, right, Silk Road, Mt. Gox, I was pretty interested. But I wasn't ultimately like a religious convert. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is highly interesting. This is something I have a moderate degree of interest in. And later I'd switched from the supply chain software, and then I'm working at Swift doing a lot of payments and security settlement stuff. And in 2015, late 2015, I think November, ConsenSys and BlackRock held a meetup. It was a workshop, how to design a smart contract using Solidity. And that's when I was fully, like religiously converted to crypto. And because having worked in supply chain and security settlement and payments, I was like, oh, this stuff makes perfect sense, right? From there, I started to try to get Swift to do stuff on Ethereum. And in that time, that meant working with ConsenSys because that was the only game in town at all doing anything interesting in blockchain. I mean, that's why Joe founded it, to like have an ecosystem built for Ethereum. So collaborating a lot with them. I also, through the years, got a little interested in some of the other stuff that's not so industry focused in the blockchain. I like some of the democratization it can do. I'm very into DAOs. So various times I had the temptation of leaving Swift to join ConsenSys. I got asked in like 17 and 18 by some friends working there. And then eventually I just did in 2021. And no hate to Swift. They're doing cool stuff with Chainlink now, but that's how I got the ConsenSys. I guess around the payments you're asking, I think really a big challenge I've had the past few years is like, I always say this, the two most fundamental financial applications since Mesopotamia are payments and lending. And it doesn't matter, pick a society, right? Like feudalism, Mesopotamia, Middle Ages, payments and lending. Mercantilism, colonial era, payments and lending. You even go to like market socialism in Yugoslavia or the Soviet Union under communism, payments and lending. You cannot find a place with like 5 or more people that doesn't have payments and lending, right? And to build a truly like mass market payments and lending application, like we've had the building blocks for a number of years. Like it's like stablecoins, DeFi lending protocols, probably make L2s to get like the essential like throughput and latency stuff. And then maybe like MPC or smart accounts. MPC smart accounts are a little newer. L2s that are like ZKVM or Real Finality are a little newer, but it's still kind of shocking to me that we don't have like 3 or 4 billion people like doing their personal banking on chain. And I guess the challenge we've taken on is we want to do that. And that's kind of why we've launched the MetaMask Card. You said you probably haven't heard too much about it because we've kind of done this quiet pilot. We did a PR with MasterCard when it went live in August. And it started to be available to Europeans and British people. It became available since for Swiss people. We didn't say anything. If you're Swiss and you find yourself in the portfolio dashboard of MetaMask, you'll see there's a card sign up. But we are shortly expanding the Americas, and we are going to do much more like real activation events because we wanted to make sure the card was working first. But like, that's one thing to be able to pay in a real debit card, not like a top up or prepaid. I always say like a Friday, I have 300 USDC in my EOA. I call up my friend. I'm like, hey, you want to have some drinks? He says, no, I'm flying to DevCon. I call up my wife. Do you want to have dinner? She says, no, I have work. I go home. I put on, Jerry Maguire on TV. I sit back, I get out my MetaMask. I can put that money into Aave or Beefy or Morpho or Compound. You can't do that with these top up and prepaid cards because you've essentially off ramped and it becomes like a debit balance. So we've created like a real checking account concept. But as we go live, that's not enough for us. We want to really deconstruct the full banking experience, which is to me, saving, spending, lending, credit, and rewards, and have a very compelling offering across all those for like underbanked people or people just ideologically are committed to being their own bank. Sorry, that was a long intro.
No, that's great.
That's an
I'm
excellent
so
intro.
I'm sure Rhett and Jared probably want to jump in with a bunch of questions, but let me just ask this before we go in different directions. I am curious, why do you think it has taken so long to get to people being able to buy coffee with crypto, which has always been sort of my like goalpost, right? Like I need to be able to just go down the street and spend it like it's anything else. Otherwise, it's not actually useful. So what's been like the major roadblock? Because a lot of people have sort of tried and there's been some solutions, but they've all been like kind of clunky or not widespread. Yeah, just curious if you can identify that one sort of big roadblock that's been in the way.
Yeah. So I want to say this in a way that's not totally negative on the industry because like I do have a little bit of criticism that there aren't 3 billion people out in the world like putting USDC into Aave and spending the AUSDC and saying, hey, or taking out loans and go, boom, that's a checking, savings, and credit account all in one. That should be happening today. And that's no criticism of Aave, who's doing excellent work. It's the bridges that we have to build with it. But if I was going, because people are doing a lot of good work, but I think part of the challenge is like, there's like manufacturing and distribution, right? Like in any industry, like you manufacture cars, but they get sold on a lot. You manufacture lipstick, it gets sold at a retail location. And I think like a lot of the fintechs that were so big in the 2010s were really good at the distribution of financial services. They created like these really slick UXs and interfaces and easy ways to do like Venmo pay your friend, And then in DeFi, we did the opposite. We like totally revolutionized the manufacturing of financial services where there is like, collateralized lending pools and DEXs and all those things that did not exist before. But we haven't done a lot of great work like at the UX level. And I think there's a few things there. Like number one, a lot of the pieces were there, but to really build it, I don't think they were all there. Stablecoins have been around for a while, at least DAI, as back as what, like 18. The L2s really popped up, Arbitrum in them around, 2021. But I would say that like we use Linea for ours. I think it's important to have a ZK AVM with like real and not optimistic finality because all real world payments are like multi-legged. So you tap the card, your crypto goes to this treasury account, but then fiat gets paid out. So we can't have like optimistic finality where it gets rolled back in 7 days because, all right, what if 50,000 Nikes got bought in that block? It's Black Friday. That creates a major counterparty risk. So I think ZK is a big part helping there. I would say too, though, that the industry over the past few years has been really focused on infra a lot. And that's great. I'm glad that there's more infra, but like the infra things that I named, like not restaking, not some of these other new L1s or L2s, just like any ZK L2, especially Linea. We love Linea. Maybe MPC, stablecoins, lending protocols is enough to build this experience, but there hasn't been the incentive because like the way a lot of people build projects, like they're building it to maybe sell a token. And I think a lot more people should be focused on selling transactions, like blockchain sell blocks, right? And I think in the payments business, you can sell the payment. And especially you can even not monetize the user. You can monetize the merchant, right? You get like an interchange fee from the merchant. So there is a really rich way to do this and create something useful for people. It's just a question of either the incentives being there if you're doing a startup or if you work at a large incumbent like ConsenSys, taking this decision that you want to build something really useful. And I think that's something we've tried in the past and are trying now. So a lot of reasons. I think there's been mixed incentives the past few years. I think maybe a lot of the focus also geographically, like a lot of people think about the US and a lot of people were burned on crypto after like FTX and all that. Whereas like I go to Latin America a lot. I speak Spanish, Portuguese. I've run Latin America for ConsenSys. I went to ETH Rio in 2023, the week after NFT NYC. And you remember 2023 was pretty, prices were bad, not a lot of on-chain activity, not many people making revenue. NFT NYC was kind of sad. I'm going to parties. They just have like a few sliders there. Everyone looks kind of down. I show up to ETH Rio. People are pumped, right? Because like 80% of the activity in Brazil is like stablecoin. On exchange volume is stablecoins. So for these people, it's like solving a real need. And in fact, Rio, Sao Paulo are kind of like the richer areas of Sao Paulo. The biggest area for crypto adoption is actually the Northeast, which is a somewhat more financially neglected area. So I guess the combination of like market incentives, people just having the will to do it, a few of those components maybe being a little bit better now, and then having this kind of global focus of where you can really build something interesting for people. I know we're taking the challenge seriously, but I think others are too. So I'm really excited for what we can build this cycle.
Yeah, I've noticed that same thing that where financial markets are less mature, there's a bigger need. You can buy coffee basically anywhere in Turkey with Tron USDT,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you know really valuable there. I think it's really valuable in the U.S. too, but it's you don't need a painkiller as badly if your pain level is low. Like maybe you have some pain level you didn't know about, but yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I'm with you though that like not to be critical of the industry, but this is a really important thing, and it needs to, you know, now's the time I think for this to really take over, even in the more developed countries. And it's a huge pain point. I will tell you where the pain is high in the U.S. is for people who are in crypto, like myself. Like on and off ramping and dealing with that kind of stuff is so much pain. And I was dealing with some of that with my bank just recently with on and off ramping stuff, and then anyway, it was just a huge pain. So for people who aren't big into crypto, maybe they wouldn't notice it as much right now, even though it is better in a lot of key ways. So, do you mind if I ask you, tell us how kind of the MetaMask card works right now? Can you fund it with multiple different assets? Does it have to be USDC? Does it have to be like a whitelisted set of assets, etc.?
Yeah, cool. So actually, let me answer that, but I forgot one thing to JF that leans into this. In your question, why would we built this today? I think I've been in crypto since you could say I'm interested. I've owned assets since like 2012, but I've been trying to work and really do applications in it since 2015. And one thing I noticed is that a lot of people are trying to displace things without like understanding all the components of what they're trying to displace. It's like Andreessen says, like software is eating the world. Would you eat something if you don't know what it is? It's you might get sick. You know what I mean? And because I used to work at Swift, a lot of people were like, "Oh, stablecoins, will they replace Swift?" I was like, "No, dude. They'll replace pre-funded Nostro accounts, which is the Swift message contains a lot of valuable information for like a wholesale payment, right? But when you send it for a payment, at least there's a pre-funded account with like $1 billion in it. And if you're a GTB, a global transaction bank, you might have like 100 of these accounts around the world. So you have $100 billion locked up for nothing. Today, tomorrow, with stablecoins or tokenized deposits, you can still send that rich Swift message, but then not have that pre-funded Nostro account. So it's like understand which piece you're going for. And I think me and this fellow Marco Monaco, who's now he's doing I think the TAP, the L2 for Ton. He was a friend of mine. He was helping to launch Linea, and we just had this like aha moment one day because we both worked in blockchain and banking a lot. We're like, let's make a real debit card that works, but by understanding the components, we were able to do that well. So we thought like, all right, what we're going to do is create a treasury account on chain that you delegate to just like you would like a DeFi contract that can like wipe you out for being under collateralized, but it will just be wiping out the amounts of the POS authorizations, and you can retain control. You can delegate an infinite amount of an asset, or like 500 USDC means you can spend 105 times, 500 once, 5. Now you still have the card controls too. If there's a fraud, you'll get rebated, but you have those 2 levels of control. And then essentially every time you tap the card, there'll be a balance check. The funds sweep to that treasury contract. And then all we needed was the combination of someone who's an issuing bank and a program manager and a VASP. So issuing bank is who issues a card, right? Virtual asset service provider is someone with a license to swap crypto for fiat. And then a program manager is someone who manages the program of the card. They like assist with the KYC and the fraud management and stuff. And we worked with banks, and then there's an underlying issuer named Monovate that we're working with in Europe and the UK to create that, and such that, you can spend today USDC, and wrapped ETH on Linea. We chose Linea again because I think like ZK VMs are really well built for this. Also, it is if you check by monthly active users, it is the L2 with the number 3 with the third most monthly active users. And it has a pretty decent, I think one of the top DeFi ecosystems, which helps us get to that credit lending component of it. We will be expanding the number of assets that you can spend shortly. To be frank with you, it's almost arbitrary to implement them from a technical level. The contract can already sweep the assets. What we're working through right now with those other assets that we're expanding to are like 3 things. And One is, there's some commercials behind it. We probably need a little money as an initial liquidity buffer. We make money as the card program goes on, but like, again, if there's like a DPEG or something and it's Black Friday, we need to have that buffer just to start. So they have to give us a little bit of money to start. One time we can fund it as it goes on, but just to have that there. Number two, there's like a minimal amount of like UX work to enable it, right? And then number three, a lot of these folks we want to work out rewards programs with. So they can do pretty rich rewards with us where they essentially just tell us like, all right, I'll give you 100,000 of X token. If that's 1% cash back, that's 10 million worth of spend. If that's 2%, that's 5 million worth of spend, right? So they can tell us the cash back percentage that they want, and they can do it by geo. So they can say, I just want to focus on Brazil. That's where I want adoption. I just want to focus on Ireland or the entirety of the European Union. And usually we'll do a rewards argument. We'll do a rewards agreement without listing the token. We'll do listing without rewards, but most people just want to get it all done at once. So I do expect there to be a bit of a Cambrian explosion of spendable assets over the next 5 to 6 months, where we're covering a combination of cryptos. We already got wrapped ETH. We'll add another more of those stablecoins, things like tokenized treasuries. And then also I'm really excited about like AAC token style assets. So imagine you put some USDC into Aave. It's paying like 15% right now. So whether you're in LATAM where it's really necessary, you're underbanked. Frankly, you're in the US checking account. You're not making a 1500th of 15% right now on your USD, right? But you can spend that AUSDC and you will earn the asset until the moment that you tap your card, right? So it's really just creating all of that together, I think is probably the impediment to getting more assets. But technically we can turn a lot on. So or functionally, I should say. So we are quite excited to expand that over the next few months as we do new countries, new spendables, and new DeFi integrations is kind of our North Star right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I do think that's actually somewhat of what you could call a killer feature, is if you could have some kind of yield generating asset that's sitting in what is essentially a checking account or a debit account that you can then spend with. So if you've got, $1,000 or $10,000 that's yielding a couple dollars or $10 here or there per day or per month or whatever, you've essentially got like, oh, I made $10 this month. I can spend that essentially almost for free because I'm yielding it and now I can spend it. Having the ability to do that and have this sort of passive saving and spending ability is the kind of, I think, crypto unlock that is exactly what we need to see for, massive expansion.
Can I just add something to that? I think that's a really interesting point. Like, so in the current model that you're up against, like traditional credit card model, there are two major things that I think are like very valuable for consumers. So first of all, I can spend money right now that I don't have to pay for right now, right? So I can pay for it a little bit later. For most people, that's a major actually point. If everyone had to pay all their credit cards off and then start on a debit model, I think most people would have a very hard time catching up with that sort of gap, right? So that's one major advantage. I think the other one is that like 1% cash back, right? So the credit card gets 2% from the merchant, maybe passes some of it back to me. So overpaying in cash using a credit card just makes more sense. So I'm sort of like attached to this model as a consumer. But I think if you're able to do, and I think that's what you were saying before, that you could talk to the merchants and get some sort of reward, plus what Jared just brought up, this idea of having a checking account, but it's really a savings account with a good percentage back. If you can get yield plus a percentage reward back. Okay, so I have to pay for everything right now. I can't do it as a loan, really, unless we can loop in something with
credit.
Okay, so go ahead.
A little ETH on Arbitrum, take out some USDC on Linea. So we want to do all five. Again, saving, spending, lending, credit, and rewards. Absolutely. But yeah, we want to hit all five.
Right. So, but it seems to me like the sort of like the two killer features, if I was going to add a second one, so the one that Jared mentioned, and then this reward back, like how far are we from being able to do both of those things, do you think? And then, or am I missing the point? Like, what's the third killer feature? And is that the right ranking? Those are the two most important ones, or is there another one that I'm not thinking about or mentioning?
No, that's it. But like, let me kind of lay out the way it works today. Is like saving you can already do, right? It's MetaMask. You can save in all types of cryptos, stablecoins, RWAs, etc. To really make it easy saving, though, you should be able to spend those assets. So that's why we have to expand it. But the spending of the assets that are spendable is anywhere MasterCard's accepted, right? So I take my card, I can be in Dubai or Buenos Aires or Albuquerque, and I can spend, right? So we've kind of solved that, though we want to make the actual savables more matched with the spendables, not as limited. When we get into rewards, we will be shortly implementing them. A lot of folks, like I say, these different tokens want to incentivize it. To your point as well, though, there's merchant-funded rewards. There are like bid-ask systems in the card networks where like a merchant likes the demo of your users and they essentially cut you a check, like 3% back or 2% back on purchases. We can also give that back in the form of tokens. Then, of course, we're self-funding a little. So we should have a pretty rich on-chain cashback program starting soon. Then the lending and the credit is technically a sophisticated DeFi user can do it today. I'm doing it. I take my USDC, I put it into Beefy. It's a yield optimizer that goes to Mendy. I'm getting like 15% USDC in the form of USDC. I just have to then withdraw it to be spendable. Ideally, in the next few months, we will have something where maybe those withdrawals are automatic, or maybe there's like an AUSDC or a CUSDC style token that is spendable, or a USDY that already rebases. I'm not sure if rebasing is the technical way they would say it, but that already has like the treasury operations wrapped into it, or a USDM. So we are contemplating all of those. And that is essentially, I think, those 5 elements. So then you get the saving, spending, lending, credit, rewards. Technically, outside of the rewards, which we have to implement, if you're a pretty adept DeFi user, you can get most of these today. But we really want it to be upfront in the platform where you're not swapping or bridging. You're just clicking a button and using it. So the amount to the extent to which we productize it, particularly, I guess maybe I'll rewind for a second. Rhett, you were talking earlier a little bit about how you might be an ideal user, even though you're not an underbanked user. We actually have, I think, 4 core like cohorts that we want to use the card. We have the underbanked. I'm quite passionate about that because I know I've been responsible for Latin America. I know what it's like. I wasn't so wealthy all the time growing up. I have a little bit of a compassionate heart or whatever, but also it is a business. It's good, to help these people. But then you also have like whales, total other end of the spectrum. Some of these people are like, have trouble sometimes with the banking relationships. They want it cheaper, even if it's totally easy for them to off ramp. Maybe the economics are bad. And also they don't really care about taxes. If you were in like the ETH seed round, you've been staking ever since, you just have to spend this ETH before you die, right? You need a way to do it. You're not like, oh, should I spend it today or tomorrow? You just need a way to spend all this ETH you have. ETH is money, but ETH is your money for sure if you're in that case, right? Thirdly, we have like just people with like an ideological commitment to not being banked, kind of degens, people who just want to be their own bank, whether they could go sign up for like a very premium private bank card, they have a commitment to being their own bank, self-custody, your keys, your coins, your card. That might be a slogan we have. And then number 4, I think if we get these incentives right with DeFi and with rewards, we'll probably get some of those like points guys. You remember there was all those blogs back in the day about if you sign up for this card, you get the most miles. Like imagine if you can stack like USDC cashback, some reward from Linea. If you go to LVMH, you get a certain reward. If you do a certain time of day, and if you can stack all these together and you're like, wow, I'm actually getting like 7% cashback. You might not even have to be crypto native to be like, yeah, look, I see the value in this. And they may have some overlap with the degens, but I think all 4 of those cohorts are supremely interested in those 5 core services around just getting interest on their deposits, being able to take out credit, getting rewards on their spend.
I think that's amazing. Yeah. And doing it also with just these yield bearing stables sitting there is crazy. So we've talked with you a little bit about AVUSD, which we just kind of early access launched. And last week the APY was like 50%. And my goal is like, okay, if I can park some staked AVUSD in this MetaMask card, maybe I can get to personal infinite runway if I can spend less than my APR is providing, which would be awesome. Will you tell me just briefly how, like under the hood, so if I have right now wrapped ETH on my card and then I go to spend it, under the hood, does it like do some DEX swap into USDC and send that to the VASP or something?
Yeah, so it's a little bit simpler than that because, the fund there's no intermediary asset. It's really an off ramp. It goes to fiat in that exact moment that you pay the merchant, right? So if you spend USDC, for instance, the funds sweep to the treasury contract, And then we ensure that the program manager has direct access, like circle access is literally what it's called, right? Where you can mint burn for one-to-one. And for future stables and projects, we work that out. If it's algorithmic, they'll work with the foundation because we are pretty committed to providing like a one-to-one always redemption for stables to our users. And we also don't charge FX if you are in the country of the stable. So like if you spend USDC in Brazil, you will get a one-to-one USDC redemption, but you'll get hit with the FX rate because there's a conversion. But if you were to spend like Transfero is a big company there with a tokenized Brazilian real called BRZ. If you spend that, you get hit with no FX, right? So Stable is pretty easy. We just tap the either like one-to-one redemption that they have through their mechanism, or if it's algorithmic, we work out a way that like either with the foundation or with market makers that we sell it, but somebody rebates the 0.00001 or whatever. That's part of that agreement for the listing so that we can honor the user's spend. And, you can coordinate those operations with the program managers, also a virtual asset service provider. For the floating ones, there's just like market makers and prime brokerages they have connectivity to. So if it's wrapped ETH, they'll sell it or they'll keep it depending on what they see because we're also working with them to provide like ramps capabilities. So it's nice just to have a treasury, a bunch of these assets on Linea because then when somebody onboards, they can buy it directly in the same like we have an excellent ramp, I think, ecosystem. If you look at MetaMask, we have more than anyone else. We have Coinbase, we have Robinhood, we have Revolut, we have Transact, we have MoonPay, we have Banksa, we have Koye. We have like, I don't know, like 25 ramps providers. But it would be nice to have one that was native to the card sign-up process that is also the provider. That way you can just buy the excess reserves they've built up. But in the case they did want to liquidate it, they would probably just sell it on a prime brokerage. That's all coordinated in that moment. The funds are swept to the treasury account and they're paying out fiat in that moment. So that's really no longer your problem as long as you like the spread that's been provided for the wrapped ETH. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, that's really helpful context. So will it always be Linea only, or obviously Linea and MetaMask are both ConsenSys products, both obviously really great products. But is it going to be like a cross-chain card or kind of Linea always?
We are super committed to working with Linea at the moment for a lot of reasons. It's not just like we're ConsenSys. From day one, I always said that if I was one of these card program managers or issuers working with folks, I wouldn't use an optimistic roll up because I'm on the hook for all the Nikes that I bought or the muffins or the Coke Zeros or whatever, right? So I really think that ZK is important. And we're talking about card payments here, but also as these banks get into wholesale payments, like if it's a four-legged payment across four banks, like an international $1 billion wire, and you put one leg on the blockchain, like if that somehow gets reversed ever, and the next leg is like $1 billion wire over FedWire or like a Swift message, that's pretty catastrophic. So I am really committed to ZK AVMs, and wow, we have the great relationship with Linea. It was announced it will spin out and become their own entity as it decentralizes, but like it's been super easy to build with them. We're not like charging each other. We're not like asking for grants. It's super easy to build. They have a rich DeFi ecosystem. I think there'll be some more announcements soon about it getting richer. So we are super committed to working with Linea. And as we build the cross-chain credit, I think it becomes arbitrary, right? So if you can loan some ETH on Arbitrum or some USDC on Base or some Link on Blast or whatever, and you can just take out the USDC to spend on Linea, I think it becomes less important. Although in the future, I think I would be open to perhaps like fundamentally different chains, just for the inclusion, right? Like maybe a Solana in the future, right? But as it stands, like I'm not a super fan of building real world payments things on optimistic rollups. And then for ZK, we already have Linea. Maybe for high net worth individuals, we would develop like a credit thing because ETH is not fast enough to settle these transactions, but they might just want to spend ETH they have, so we can extend like a credit line where they spend and the ETH gets settled a little later. That's not really for the mass market though. That's for like, whales. So the answer is like absolutely committed to Linea for now. Although I like to keep like a bit of an open mind. I don't see how we could better partner at this moment with anyone else,
Yeah, I'm not. So I've built a product on Linea. Gravita is a CDP, and we have an LST and things, and Linea is one of the deployments. It's an amazing, works super well. The team has been amazing to work with, etc. I totally agree with the ZK over optimistic for problems like this. And then Ethereum, it's going to be expensive and slow. Yeah, the area that I think would be most interesting to some distinct users would be like the other ones like Solana, Avalanche, like Phantom, now Sonic, especially if people want to spend those native assets. You know, like if I have some Jito Sol, or if I have some staked AVAX or something, being able to spend those on the MetaMask card is going to be a little bit more challenging if you can't support like that L1, right?
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting conversation. I would just say that like right now our focus is definitely on supporting Linea supporting us, international expansion. Like to me, like getting the card in the hands of Turkish people, getting the card in the hands of people in Hong Kong and Singapore, getting it in the hands of people in Colombia is way more important than chain expansion. Getting this type of like credit functions, like building the actual product. And I love the Solana and Avalanche teams. Avalanche's been around for a while. I have a lot of respect for them, but like having been around, MetaMask is multi-chain. We have all the snaps, and we're bringing multi-chain native to the extension. So as MetaMask, we're committed to multi-chain. But if I'm thinking about building out this really good card program, and like if I started in 2018, I would have been building on Ripple and I don't know, IOTA. There's always a new L1. So like, look, we can look in the future, but I want to build out this real like Ubank experience first before we talk about like different L1s. And Linea is Ethereum. It's an L2, but it's also Ethereum equivalent. Like you can use the same code down to the opcodes and bytecodes. So I couldn't be a bigger fan of Linea. And in fact, like the card was born because, like I said, me and Marco Monaco were just thinking like, what are the things we can do with Linea that you couldn't do before? And basically the way the card work is the simulation of the correspondent banking network. We've created a Nostro account that does FX. That's what happens when like a small bank sends to a big bank. When you don't have like Euro reserve, you send to a big bank to do the FX swap to Euro, and because they have the connectivity to a European bank, this Nostro account is like the correspondent banking tie between an EOA and the card system. And we thought it was only possible with Linea. And since day one, the Linea team has been super helpful in building it. So that's definitely the focus. Yeah.
Are you able to talk about like which geographical markets that you're sort of prioritizing and how you're thinking about those markets and sort of like potential timelines? I don't want to push you on like anything that's not been disclosed, but like anything that
When
you're
does this
comfortable
air?
talking about.
Are we live? Does this air?
We're gonna air tomorrow.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'll give you a little sneak preview for the audience. So we went live kind of like there was a press release from MasterCard and MetaMask and Banks, our program manager partner, and Motivate the Issuer that we jointly did when we went live in the European Union and the UK in August. It was actually like 2 days before we went live, so it wasn't even really like an activation event. We want to be super careful rolling it out. And again, the card is not just the product to us, that's the payment. The product to us is like a Ubank, Ret Bank, JF Bank, Jared Bank. It's all those 5 things I named, and we have to build those out. And as we're starting to do those now, we feel good making a little bit more noise. So we actually quietly went live in Switzerland in September, but we didn't tell anyone. One of my colleagues, he works in a very different division of ConsenSys, so he's not privy to all these. He was just like, yeah, can I get another invite code for a Swiss person to beta test? I was like, dude, it's live. Just go there. He's like, oh my God, yeah. So we're starting to make a little bit more noise about that. We actually have like a raffle going on. We're giving away 80 USDC a day to people in Europe, UK, and Switzerland if they post a purchase on Twitter and it's cool. So, or on Farcaster. So post a cool purchase on the video and we'll drop a little USDC to you. We will also be implementing those cashback rewards shortly. And then we will actually start to try to do the activation, not just it's live, but active, because with cards, it's like, it's not just the sign up, right? You need someone to sign up, but then it needs to be like, there's in wallet and top of wallet. So like in my wallet right now, physically, I got this Gemini card, I got an American Airlines card. I have other cards that are not in my wallet, but then I have the top of wallet. So if you take a look at like my digital, MetaMask is at the top. I maybe have a Chase. I got a few others, but MetaMask is at the top of my, boom. And that's a cool digital design there. So like the question is, are you in wallet and are you top of wallet? And that takes a lot of activations. That's the pure card business. Then there's also these things we're building. So I'm meandering a bit here, but we've been live in Europe for a while, UK, Switzerland. We're going to start making noise about it. And then the sneak preview is we'll be going live in Latin America very shortly, in a matter of weeks. Not in every country, but in countries that represent 60% of the population. And that will happen in the next, let's say 2 weeks. And then the remaining areas in Latin America, we're working, as I mentioned before, like understanding how this works. Like we have the program manager, we have the VASP, we have the treasury contract, but we need an issuing bank in each region. And then occasionally we need additional VASP licensures depending on the jurisdiction. So it's arbitrarily easy actually for us to like plug in like new issuers to work with our. We can get a new issuer, or the other issuer's backend can communicate with our current issuer's backend, and really like they don't have to know what an account or a nonce, well, an account, but I mean like a crypto account. They don't have to know what an EOA is or gas. They just have to be willing to like work with our program manager and current issuer and be associated with the MetaMask brand. And as we do that, it should be easier to turn on more markets. So we're undergoing an exercise right now that beyond the 60% of LATAM people, I'm hoping to get all of LATAM by February. And then we have a list of 34 countries we're working on with, which you can imagine are, the top crypto countries, right? It's got Philippines and Vietnam and Thailand, and of course, some LATAM countries that are already in that LATAM cohort. We're hoping to get the majority of them live by February or March. And then, how do I say this? In the US, we're not going live. We don't have an issuer. But because of the way cards work, like there's a thing called 3DS authentication that's like mandated by law in Europe. So we just turn it on for the card. In the US, it's used by market principles, but not by default. So like Ticketmaster doesn't use it, and our card can get rejected by Ticketmaster. So we need to create like whitelists for that and make it work. So that while we're not going live in the US, we will do a trial coming up shortly. So look out for it. It'll appear if you're in the US in portfolio.metamask.io/card. And we're going to let in probably a couple or more 1,000 people to use the card under the rubric of the test to ensure that the card is working properly in the US card scheme. So we won't be live in the US, but for a pretty decent number of people, they can get their hands on the card and start playing with it. So Europe, Switzerland, and UK are live. Latin America, probably in the space of weeks. We'll start that US trial. And then we will start that expansion to the 34 countries over the next 5 or 6 months with an ideal to get everywhere in the next 2 years.
What does the sort of federal or national like legal side of this look like when you want to go into a new country? Is it just, yeah, I'm not even sure how to ask this question. Like, what does that look like?
I punt almost all legal and regulatory questions to our head of public policy, Bill Hughes. But I will say it's fairly easy in a lot of these countries. It is essentially an off ramp. If off ramps exist in this country, then we can exist. So we do not have that much regulatory like overhead because essentially from the merchant's point of view and from the acquiring bank, it's just a fiat payment, right? We just have an intermediary doing the swap. So that's still not possible in certain countries. There are some countries that we would love to launch in that we're just not going to be able to this year, but it's still far more open than you might imagine. Yeah.
Okay, so there's already like a sort of a legal path forward that's already been drawn out for a different purpose, but kind of the same purpose. You can reutilize that same path, and if it exists, you just plug right into it. So it's not an insurmountable sort of issue. That's great news. I've always been sort of curious about how that worked.
Money transmitter licenses and virtual asset service provider licenses, whatever that's called. I mean, it's VASP in most of Europe. It's a bit licensed in New York. You need that. And then whatever your country calls a money transmitter license, which is often national. In the US, it's different. There's like 51 of them. But as long as you can have those, it's not really viewed as that different from an
Right.
offering. Yeah.
Yeah, as long in most countries you don't have to like draw up new laws to get this to work essentially. You can use like current legal rails.
Exactly, yeah. Because
Yeah,
it is
that's
essentially
great.
a fiat payment over Master.
Yeah,
It's a fiat payment from an issuing bank to an acquiring bank over MasterCard. Yep.
got it. Great. Do you guys have any closing questions?
When can I get mine?
That's how. Call me up.
It's that when meme.
I'll hit you up. Yep. I've been excited about this for a while. Really glad to hear
Yeah.
more details, and yeah, especially to be able to use some of these yield-bearing stables as my like savings account and not have to worry about the on-off ramping. Just go spend. It's like incredible.
Yeah, the convenience alone, but also for me it's just the excitement of like bringing. I understand that this is not going to be like how this starts, but just getting the masses on board. I think this is the sort of like this is the step where if you can get everyone to use crypto for regular day-to-day payments, this is now a widespread technology and you can't take it back. It's out of the box. It's out of the Pandora's box. It's like it's in society and it's going to be here to stay. I think that's sort of a foregone conclusion anyways, like it's here to stay. But how fast do we get to sort of a point where it's like deeply encrusted and everyone sort of sees it as like a normal technology that they're comfortable using. And this is that sort of post. And yeah, I've been excited about getting to this for a long time. So
Thank you.
I'm really happy to hear
Yeah.
that you guys are making strides.
As a DeFi builder, I'm also excited about like working with you guys on like points type programs to drive
Absolutely.
adoption to our assets. I think anyone who's a builder who has a stablecoin or an LST or a lending market, et cetera, would, they should be, pounding down your door right now. So
Yeah, we're working with Varex right now for an attestation that you are a card holder, which would then signify that like you could have a few AOAs associated with it, but then you can pass some of these simple resistance checks, and then you can feel much more confident distributing rewards to the people. Of course, you can also check their Linea scan for like their actual spend history, and kind of like in the traditional merchant world, like decide if you want to give that's what happens in the MasterCard and Visa like bid markets, like LVMH or Shake Shack say, hey, you know what? To these users, I want to give 3% instead of 5% because they're part of the profile that I want, right? So you could offer preferential rewards based on the fact that they are civil. You can maybe, if they choose to add the metadata of their country, if you want to drop to certain countries. And then, of course, also the spend history. I think it's going to make a much easier way for people who want to. Now, mind you, we still respect privacy because this card can be attached to any EOA or not. So you can have your totally private EOAs, and then you can have your card spend EOAs. And the way it works, I want people to use MetaMask. I love MetaMask, but once you have the card, you can use any extension day to day, right? Like if you have another go-to extension that you use, the card, the benefits, everything is still open to you. Hopefully, as we build things with you, you decide to come and use MetaMask for everything. But because it's architected as like this EOA to fiat, it's not based on like the product per se, right? In the way that some of these custodial cards are much more tied to a specific experience. Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I think this is a good place to close it. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Is there a place where people can follow the progress of this product and maybe follow you personally?
sure. Yeah.
What are the best links?
Yeah, I post about it. So if you find I'm not the most avid Twitter user. I rejoined recently because I have to do spaces. I've been posting a little bit, but I go for spaces. But I'm Daniel Josep. It's like Joseph without an H. It's like the Catalan version or whatever. Underscore ETH. So Daniel Josep underscore ETH. On Farcaster, I'm just Daniel Josep. And then if you're mildly involved in crypto and use LinkedIn and you look up Daniel Lynch, I think I'll probably come up first. So feel free to DM me on any of those platforms. As well, just check the progress. We're going to get a little bit more aggressive about the activations we're doing. So just from MetaMask, ConsenSys, and Linea accounts, you'll see a lot of calls to action for the card. But if you do work in any of those like verticals that could touch those things I said around saving, spending, lending, credit, and rewards, so DeFi protocols such as yourselves, whether it's like LSTs, lending protocols, DEXs, anyone who wants to like either use this identity system as a better way to distribute rewards and or want to work with us on more productized lending and credit, totally in. Anyone who's working in stablecoins, RWAs to make them spendable, definitely totally in to work with you. As well as folks who are doing identity and want to like maybe connect to this type of like identity like marketplace. I think there's a lot of cool things we can build together. And then frankly, I'll be kind of real. You can build stuff for cardholders independent of us. If you check the contract that people delegate to and you're like, I want to target these people, it's permissionless, right? So there's a lot of ways for us to work together. And I'm really pleased to see, what we can build in 2025. Also, definitely with you all. I'm excited to keep up the convo.
Yeah, excited to see what we can do together as well. Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much for this opportunity. I really appreciated it.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you. Hope you all have a great day.